Hey guys, so I want to talk about this because if you didn't know, because I actually spoke with a few people who didn't even know this, one of the former vice presidents of the United States passed away. Actually, it's been a week now, Dick Cheney. And I want to talk about why Charlie Kirk, someone who was never a public official, had flags lowered at half staff for him, while there's been no national recognition given to a former vice president who recently passed. Because this is deeper than politics. This is about power, influence, and this new face that's so ugly of American nationalism. So let's get beautifully honest. What's up? Welcome to the Being Beautifully Honest podcast and channel. Thanks for being here, being subbed. If you're not, hit the button. And if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like. It's like walking in the room and hitting that light switch. Let's brighten up the place and get into the politics and BS. So here's the reality, guys. And while I'm trying to be beautifully honest about it, this is really ugly. Charlie Kirk was not a military hero. He was not a government leader. He didn't hold public office. And honestly, there were a whole lot of people in this country who did not know who he was, even though he had millions of followers and made millions of dollars. But he was one thing that mattered under this political climate. And that's a symbol because he symbolized this new wave of Christian nationalism, white Christian nationalism. We need to be specific about it, and was treated almost like a political martyr. You had these ridiculous representatives like Nancy Mace who was screaming and fake tears, crying, saying, Democrats own this. You own this. What the hell did Democrats do to cause this man to have what happened to him happen to him? Meanwhile, Dick Cheney, a former vice president of the United States, did not receive the same symbolic honor. There were no flags flown at half staff as an actual order. If anyone has done it, it was because it was their choice to do it. So, regardless of how people feel about him, his title and role in the US government, it was what it was. He was the vice president of the United States. So, why the difference? Because we're no longer operating in a political system based on traditional government hierarchy. And I remember the years back when he was the vice president, I thought that was scary. So look at where we are now. It's crazy. We are in an era where loyalty to a movement and this person, not the country, earns recognition. People are pledging allegiance to 45/47, not the United States of America. Charlie Kirk was celebrated because he was a loyal cultural soldier, if you want to call him that. He mobilized these people that he was indoctrinating with the thoughts and views that he was espousing, and he pushed identity-based political missions. And he centered himself in a narrative of victimhood and righteousness. It wasn't about who he was, it was about what he represented. And Dick Cheney didn't fit the current movement's agenda. You want to know why? Here's why.
Former Republican Vice President Dick Cheney will be voting for Kamala Harris in November. That according to his daughter Liz, a former Republican congresswoman who has endorsed Vice President Harris herself. Cheney served as VP for George W. Bush from 2001 to 2009. The staunch conservative was also a longtime congressman from Wyoming and had held several leadership roles in the House Republican caucus. Cheney has previously called former President Trump, quote, a threat to our republic, end quote. In response, former President Trump posted to social media last night that the former vice president was, quote, irrelevant and the king of endless nonsensical wars, end quote.
So, yeah, that's why. That is the reason why you are not seeing anything about Dick Cheney, former vice president, on a national front. The current person in office called him irrelevant, because he did not endorse 45/47, or even what's worse, his daughter, Liz Cheney, she was one of the people on the panel, the January 6th committee, that was investigating if this person who is now the president, but at the time, former president, contributed to the insurrection that happened at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. And we know that he was. So, this is the reason why he has not gotten any national recognition for his passing. And it's freaking disgusting. And you know why it's even more disgusting? Because I don't expect anything more from the person who's in office. It's the Republicans who have been in office prior to him coming on the scene, who still are there, who quite frankly should not be there anymore, who have allowed this cancer to grow. And I want to share another video, someone who actually was talking about this, because I was thinking the same thing and then this showed up.
Hey, so do you guys remember yesterday when Dick Cheney died? You know, Dick Cheney, who was a vice president of the United States for 8 years. Do you notice the flagpole behind me? Do you notice anything about the flag? Do you notice the flag is at full staff? Did you know that when a former president, former vice president dies, that the flags are supposed to be lowered to half staff, but Donald Trump has purposely not put out the executive order to lower the flags to half staff just because Dick Cheney didn't like him? Now listen, I can't stand Dick Cheney. Dick Cheney was a horrible shitbag of a person, and I'm completely okay with him not getting his half staff because fuck him. But it's worth pointing out that Donald Trump did issue an executive order to put the flags at half staff for Charlie Kirk.
That part. So this is what we are dealing with now, guys. Like I said, I'm not here sitting here saying, oh my God, VP Dick Cheney is no longer with us. I'm not sitting here celebrating that he's no longer with us. And I'm definitely not really sitting here saying, oh my God, it's, this is so tragic. Because one, he lived a very long, prosperous life, right? But the fact that we have someone in office who has the audacity to have flags flown at half staff for a social media influencer that was influencing people in a terrible way. Okay. And now you have all of these flunkies and junkies, I kind of call them that because they're like high on the drug of 45/47, who have been talking about possibly creating statues and naming streets after this person. And it's like, are you freaking kidding me? But yet, the former vice president of the United States, they have no mention of him whatsoever because he did not like 45/47, saw him for who he was, and evil recognizes evil, right? So let's just be clear about that. And he endorsed his opponent, Kamala Harris, and said that he would be voting for him. So I had to talk about this because when I just, thought about it, and I had spoken with a few people to talk about it too, and some of them were like, really? He died? I didn't even know he died. Because, I'm talking to people who don't really watch the news. And quite frankly, to be honest, I don't really watch the news either, but I do see the highlights of things and I get things sent to me. So this is where we are at this point in time. Dick Cheney, he is what 45/47 called to him irrelevant. But what I will say is he doesn't fit the current movement's agenda. And this is the same pattern historically that we've seen when politics and religion merge. And we are watching this formation of this so-called movement that rewards loyalty, not leadership. And honestly, that should concern everybody. Just to name a few things that should be concerning. But I wanted to talk about it and I want to get your thoughts on it. So you guys let me know what you think.
Thanks for being here, liking, and subscribing. I'm Beth, just being beautifully honest. So until next time, I wanted to keep it brief, beautiful, and now I'm going to say bye.